Caitlin Mashtatum Batchumen. How do you make a communal Erev Tchumen so anyone who wishes can rely on the Erev of this Erev Tchumen? Manechas Achavas V'Omer, a person sets down a barrel of food on which with the Erev is established, and he declares, Harei Zeh L'chol B'nei Iri L'chol Mi Sheyelech L'beis Ha'eva Lo L'beis HaMishta. Let this be for all the people of my town, namely for all those who will go beyond the original Tchum boundary to the Menachem Oval, or to join in the Shabbat Brachas. Since those people need an Erev Tchumen to perform a mitzvah, an Erev may be made for them. Because as we explained, that the only way to make an Erev Tchumen is for a mitzvah. Once the Erev is made, whoever accepted the Erev while it's still dark, while it's still daytime, and Erev Shabbos is mutter to rely on it on Shabbos and walk to the destination. Misha Tershach Osir, but those who accepted it on Friday after dark, it's also for them to rely on the Erev and must remain within the original Tchum boundary for the entire Shabbos. She'en ma'arvin misha tekshach, we cannot make an Erev after dark, since an Erev cannot take effect after Shabbos has begun. An Erev Tchumen shifts a person's makom shvisa from his actual residence to the place where the Erev was placed, allowing him to travel a full 2,000 amas beyond the Erev. Since a person's makom shvisa for Shabbos is defined when Shabbos begins, the Erev must be established on Friday while it's still daytime. Mishnah Beis, Kamahu Shiura, what's the minimum amount of food required to establish an Erev Tchumen? Mozon Shtei Sudas L'chol Echad, enough food to supply 2 meals for each and every person relying on it. Since the point of the Erev is to establish a Shabbos residence for the user, it must have enough food to sustain him for Shabbos. Although there's a mitzvah to eat 3 meals on a Shabbos, and or according to Rav Chidka, even have 4 sudas on a Shabbos, the Chacham wanted to establish a kula for Tchumen. They therefore set the Erev food portions at the minimum number of meals a person needs on Shabbos, and not on the number of meals he should be eating. The Mishnah defines the size of the meals that we're talking about. The first 2 sheets base the definitions on how much each Erev user actually consumes at a meal. So the 2 meals that we're referring to is the portion of food for his 2 daily weekday meals, and not his portion for the larger Shabbos meals. Rabbi Yehuda says it refers to his portion for the Shabbos meals and not for the larger weekday meals. Both Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda are trying to be mekel. Each bases his halacha on the suda which the person eats less, although they disagree as to which meal that is. According to Rameir, a person generally eats less during the week than on Shabbos. The amount of food needed for the Erev is therefore the amount he eats on 2 weekday meals. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that since an extra meal is eaten on Shabbos, most people eat less at each Shabbos meal. So the Erev is based on what the person eats at his Shabbos Suda. According to Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda, the size of the Erev is defined by the actual eating habits of the person using it. The next 2 shittas that the Mishnah is going to bring hold that the size of the Erev for any user is what an average person eats at 2 meals. The Mishnah now is going to explain the amount of food needed when bread is being used to establish the Erev. Rabbi Yechanan ben Breka says each user's portion is a loaf of bread sold to a punyon, which is a small coin at a time when 4 of wheat can be purchased for a selah. This equals the volume of 6 eggs. Reb Shimon says the portion for each person is 2/3 of a loaf. When 3 loaves of bread are made from a kav of wheat, since each loaf is 1/3 of a kav, which equals the volume of 8 eggs, and only 2/3 of a loaf is required for an eruv, the required food portion per person equals the volume of 5 1/3 eggs. Reb Shimon's measure is those 2/3 of an egg less than Reb Yechanan ben Breka. So kum tois that Reb Yechanan ben Breka and Reb Shimon disagree as to whether the kikar lechem that we're discussing over here equals the volume of 6 or 8 eggs. Half of the kikar that we're discussing above is negeya by hilchis tumas teras. If someone enters a house and stays for the length of time it takes to eat a half a loaf of bread, the clothing that he's wearing becomes tameh as well. Obviously, the amount of time needed for the clothing to become tameh depends on the size of the loaf. So according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Breka, it's the amount of time it takes to eat half of a 6-egg loaf, while according to Rabbi Shimon, it's the time it takes to eat half of an 8-egg loaf. And only half of the half, meaning a quarter of it, relates to the halacha of making a person's body pasul for truma. The term pasul refers to a tameh person or an object whose tumah is too weak to be transmitted further. Although food is not capable of transferring its tumah to people minat Torah, the Chachamim were geyser that someone who eats an amount of tameh food equaling a quarter of the standard loaf becomes possible and may not eat truma or kachim. So food, if you have food equal to 1/4 of the loaf mentioned above is tamei, and a person eats it, he becomes possible from eating truma. Here too, the amount of food that must be consumed to become possible depends on the loaf size under discussion. According to Rechon, a break is the size of 1.5 eggs, and according to Reb Shimon, it's the size of 2 eggs. Mishnah Gimel. The Mishnayos and the rest of this parak will discuss various hilchis irulei chatzeres. The first halacha concerns a chatzer that contains a building with a gallery of at least 10 tvachim above the ground. It's a porch, let's say, and a ladder or steps connecting this porch to the ground. So homes on the upper level open onto this porch, and the residents of that level go down the ladder or down the steps through the chatzer to reach the street. And the homes on the ground level open directly into the chatzer. Since the porch is separated from the floor of the chatzer by a height of 10 tvachim, we can look at it as a separate rishus. The ladder that connects are like 2 chatzeres connected by a door, and they have the option of uniting one eruv and making 2 separate eruvin. So the Mishnah speaks of a case where they remain separate. If the residents at the ground level of a courtyard and the residents of the mirpesas, of the porch, above it forgot to make a joint eruv, but they did make separate eruvin, so that each one may carry on their own level, but not from one to another. Any post or other elevated area that rises 10 tvachim above the chatzer's floor is viewed as belonging to the porch, the mirpesas, because the gallery residents, the people who live by the mirpesas, have easier access to it than the people from the chatzer. As such, objects may be carried between the post and you make a 10 tefach high post, and then you could carry between the mirpesat and the chatzer. As such, the objects may be carried between the post and the mirpesat, and not between the post and the chatzer. If, however, the post is less than 10 tvachim above the chatzer's floor, it's viewed as belonging to the rishus, to the chatzer, as well as to the mirpesat, because it's equally accessible to both areas. Since carrying between the chatzar and the mirpesat is aser, it's likewise forbidden to carry between the post and either area. It's interesting because it would be less than 10 tvachim, l'chayra, it shouldn't change anything. If either a mound of earth surrounding a pit or a rock is 10 tvachim high and it stands in the chatzar next to the mirpesat, and the mound or rock belongs to the mirpesat, as such, objects may be carried between the mound or rock and the mirpesat, but not between them and the chatzar. If the mound or rock rises less than 10 tvachim above the courtyard floor, belongs to the chatzar and the mirpesat. If the residents of the chatzar and mirpesat have not united in one eruv, it's usher to carry between the mound or the rock and either area. What are we talking about? That where we say that the top of the 10 tvachim mound belongs to the mirpesat bismucha, regarding a case where the top of the mound is close enough to the mirpesat to guarantee easy access. When the top of the mound is far from the mirpesat, even if the mound is 10 tvachim high, it belongs both to the chatzar and to the mirpesat, since it's no more accessible to one area than the other. And what's considered close to the gallery, whatever is not 4 tvachim away from the gallery. To be continued.